The telegram arrived at the Brownsville, Texas postal office on a scorching afternoon in July 1878, bearing news that would shatter Katherine Thompson's world into 1,000 pieces, though she did not know it yet as she stood outside her father's general store, watching the dust devils dance down Elizabeth Street. Katherine wiped the sweat from her brow with the back of her hand, leaving a smudge of flour across her sun-kissed skin. At 22 years old, she had spent the last 6 years helping her father run Thompson's general store, ever since her mother had passed from fever. The work was endless and often thankless, but Katherine harbored dreams that stretched far beyond the wooden shelves stocked with canned goods and bolts of fabric. She dreamed of opening a restaurant, a real establishment with tables covered in white linen and meals that would remind the rough settlers of Brownsville that civilization could exist even on the edge of the frontier. People laughed when she mentioned it. Women did not own restaurants. Women did not own much of anything. The sun beat down mercilessly as Katherine carried another sack of flour inside, her practical brown skirt swishing around her ankles. Her father, Thomas Thompson, sat behind the counter, his face pale and drawn. He had been losing weight steadily over the past months, though he insisted it was merely the heat affecting his appetite. Katherine knew better, but she pushed the worry aside as she always did, focusing instead on the work that needed doing. "Papa, the Millers need their order delivered before sundown," she said, setting the flour down with a grunt. "I can take the wagon if you watch the store." Thomas looked up from the ledger he had been studying, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. "Katie, girl, I need to talk to you about something." The serious tone in his voice made her stomach clench. "What is it? Sit down, please." Katherine pulled up a stool, her heart beginning to race. Thomas removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes, suddenly looking every one of his 58 years. "I have been to see Dr. Harrison. And the pain in my stomach, the weight loss, it is not something that will get better, Katie. He says I have maybe 6 months, perhaps a year if fortune smiles on me." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Katherine gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles turning white. "No, Dr. Harrison must be wrong. We will go to San Antonio, find another doctor." "I have already been to San Antonio. The doctor there said the same thing." Thomas reached across and took his daughter's hand. "Katie, we need to talk about what happens next. The store, your future." "I do not want to talk about this," Katherine said, her voice cracking. "You are not going to die. I will take care of you, nurse you back to health." "Katie, please listen. The store is barely breaking even as it is. The debts are piling up. When I am gone, you will not be able to manage it alone. I have been thinking you should sell it. Use whatever money is left to go back east. Your mother had family in Virginia. Perhaps they could take you in, help you find a suitable husband." Katherine pulled her hand away, standing abruptly. "I do not want to go east. I do not want to find a suitable husband. I want to stay here in Brownsville. This is my home." "And do what? A woman alone cannot run a business in this town. You know that as well as I do." "Then I will find another way." Katherine's jaw set stubbornly, that same determination that had gotten her through her mother's death rising to the surface. "I have been saving money, Papa, for my restaurant." Thomas shook his head sadly. "Katie, that is a lovely dream, but it takes more than dreams to build a business. It takes capital, connections, experience in cooking for large numbers. And even if you had all that, the town council would never approve a business license for an unmarried woman. Then the town council is full of fools. Perhaps, but they are fools with power." Thomas sighed, reaching for his glasses again. "I am sorry, Katie. I wish I could leave you in better circumstances. I wish your mother were still here. She would know what to say to comfort you." Katherine felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had learned early that crying accomplished nothing. "I need to make that delivery," she said stiffly. "We can talk more about this later." She fled before her father could protest, grabbing the miller's order and loading it onto the wagon. The two horses, old Jasper and Belle, nickered softly as she climbed onto the seat and took up the reins. The familiar weight of responsibility settled over her shoulders as she guided the wagon down the rutted street. Past the saloons and boarding houses, the blacksmith shop and the small church that served as the spiritual center for Brownsville's growing population. The town had been founded after the Mexican-American War ended in 1848, built on the northern bank of the Rio Grande, directly across from Matamoros, Mexico. For 30 years, it had grown steadily, becoming an important port and trading center. Katherine had lived here her entire life, had watched the town transform from a rough military outpost to something approaching respectability. She loved it fiercely, loved the wide Texas sky and the blend of cultures, the Spanish mixing with English on the streets, the smell of tamales competing with the scent of beef stew. She could not imagine leaving it all behind. The Miller Ranch sat 5 miles outside of town, and Katherine used the drive to compose herself. By the time she pulled up in front of the modest ranch house, she had managed to push her father's news into a corner of her mind where she could examine it later in private. Mrs. Miller came out to greet her, a harried woman with 4 children clinging to her skirts. "Oh, Miss Thompson, you are a blessing," Mrs. Miller said, counting out coins into Katherine's palm. "My husband is out with the cattle and we were down to nothing in the pantry." "Happy to help, Mrs. Miller." Katherine helped carry the supplies inside, accepting a cup of lukewarm water before beginning the journey back to town. She was halfway back when she heard the sound of a horse approaching fast behind her. Katherine glanced over her shoulder to see a rider coming up quickly, dust billowing in his wake. She pulled the wagon to the side of the road, watching as the man slowed his horse to a trot as he drew near. "Afternoon, miss," the rider said, tipping his hat. Katherine found herself looking at a man roughly her own age, perhaps a year or two older, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of the sage that grew wild across the prairie. He sat his horse with the easy confidence of someone who had spent more time in the saddle than on the ground, and his clothes, though dusty from travel, were of good quality. A working cowboy, she surmised, but one who took pride in his appearance. "Good afternoon," she replied cautiously. A woman alone on the road learned to be careful. "Name is Nathan Powell," the man said. "I am looking for Thompson's General Store in Brownsville. Am I headed in the right direction?" "You are. Another mile down this road and you will run right into town. The store is on Elizabeth Street, right in the center. You cannot miss it." Nathan Powell smiled, and Katherine felt something flutter unexpectedly in her chest. "Much obliged. You would not happen to be Miss Thompson, would you? I was told the owner had a daughter who helped run the place." "I am Katherine Thompson," she admitted. "What business do you have at our store?" "Looking for work, actually. I heard your father might be hiring someone to help with deliveries and heavy work. I have been working cattle drives up from Mexico, but I am looking to settle down in one place for a while. Brownsville seems like a good town." Katherine studied him more carefully. He looked strong, capable, the kind of man who could handle the physical demands of the job. And heaven knew her father needed help, especially now. But they could barely afford to keep the store running as it was. Hiring someone seemed impossible. "I am not sure we can afford to hire anyone right now," she said honestly. "But you are welcome to talk to my father about it. He makes those decisions." "Fair enough." Nathan adjusted his hat against the sun. "Mind if I ride alongside you back to town? I would appreciate the company." Katherine hesitated, then nodded. "Suit yourself." They traveled in silence for a few minutes, the only sounds the creaking of the wagon and the steady clip-clop of hooves on the hard, packed road. Finally, Nathan spoke again. "You grow up in Brownsville, born here, never left. Must be something, watching a town grow up around you." "I have been drifting most of my life. Never stayed in one place long enough to call it home." "Why settle down now?" Katherine asked, curious despite herself. Nathan was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. "A man gets tired of drifting eventually. Starts thinking about putting down roots, building something that will last. The cattle drives pay well enough, but there is no future in it. No real future anyway." Katherine understood that sentiment more than he knew. Building something that lasts is harder than it sounds. Especially in a place like this. "That is what I like about the frontier, though," Nathan said, his voice warming with enthusiasm. "Everything is new here. A person can reinvent themselves, become whoever they want to be. The past does not matter as much as what you are willing to work for." "That is easy for a man to say," Katherine replied, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "Men can become whoever they want. Women have fewer options." Nathan glanced at her sharply, something like understanding flickering in his sage-colored eyes. "That does not seem fair." "Fair or not, it is the way things are." They reached the outskirts of Brownsville, and Katherine guided the wagon toward the store. Nathan followed, dismounting and tying his horse to the hitching post outside. Katherine climbed down from the wagon seat, suddenly aware of how disheveled she must look after a day of hard work in the Texas heat. Thomas Thompson looked up as they entered, his expression brightening slightly when he saw the stranger. "Can I help you?" "Papa, this is Nathan Powell," Katherine said. "He is looking for work." For the next hour, Katherine busied herself restocking shelves and organizing inventory while her father and Nathan talked in low voices near the counter. She tried not to eavesdrop, but she caught fragments of their conversation. Nathan had experience with horses and heavy lifting, could read and write, and was willing to work for room and board plus a small wage. Thomas sounded interested but hesitant, and Katherine knew he was thinking about the money, or rather the lack of it. Finally, Nathan shook Thomas's hand and headed for the door. He paused next to Katherine, who was arranging tins of coffee on a high shelf. "Your father said he needs to think about it, but if he decides to hire me, I hope we will be working together, Miss Thompson." "We shall see, Mr. Powell," Katherine replied, keeping her tone neutral. After Nathan left, Thomas called Katherine over. "He seems like a good man, and heaven knows we need the help. But Katie, I am not sure we can afford it." "Then let me forego my wages for a while," Katherine said impulsively. "If he is as strong as he looks, he could handle the heavy deliveries, free me up to focus on other things." "What other things?" Katherine took a deep breath. "I want to start cooking, Papa. Real food, not just the basic supplies we sell. I could make meals, sell them here in the store. People are always hungry, and most of the men in town are eating nothing but beans and hardtack. If I could prove there is a demand for prepared food, maybe that would convince the town council that my restaurant idea has merit." Thomas looked at her for a long moment, and Katherine saw the conflict in his eyes. He wanted to encourage her dreams, but he also wanted to protect her from disappointment. Finally, he nodded slowly. "All right, we will hire Nathan Powell, and you can try your cooking idea. But Katie, if this does not work, if the money runs out, you need to promise me you will consider going east." "I promise to consider it," Katherine said carefully, knowing she had no intention of leaving Texas. Nathan Powell started work the next morning, arriving just as Katherine was opening the store. He had found lodging at a boarding house down the street, a respectable establishment run by a widow named Mrs. Chen. Thomas gave him a quick tour of the store, showed him where everything was kept, and then promptly retreated to a chair in the corner, clearly exhausted by even that small effort. Katherine watched this with growing alarm. Her father was declining faster than she had realized. The thought of losing him made her chest tighten painfully, but she forced herself to focus on the present moment. There was work to be done. "Mr. Powell," she said briskly, "there are 3 deliveries that need to be made today. I have them listed here with addresses. Can you handle the wagon?" "I can, and please call me Nathan. Mr. Powell makes me sound like a banker or a lawyer." He smiled that easy smile again, and Katherine found herself smiling back despite her determination to remain professional. "Very well, Nathan, and you may call me Katherine. Katherine it is." He took the list from her, his fingers brushing hers briefly. The contact was brief and entirely innocent, but Katherine felt that strange flutter in her chest again. She busied herself in the store's small back room, the space she had decided to convert into a makeshift kitchen. It was not much, just a wood stove and a work table, but it would have to do. She had been saving her wages for 2 years, hiding the money in a tin under her bed, and she used a portion of it now to purchase supplies: flour, sugar, eggs, butter, spices. Her mother had been an excellent cook, and she had taught Katherine everything she knew before the fever took her. By noon, Katherine had produced 24 meat pies, their crusts golden and flaky, filled with beef and vegetables. The smell alone was enough to make her stomach rumble. She set them out on the counter with a handwritten sign: "Home-cooked meat pies, 15 cents each." The first customer, a grizzled prospector who looked like he had not had a proper meal in weeks, bought 3 pies on the spot. "Miss Thompson, if these taste half as good as they smell, you have got yourself a regular customer," he declared. They tasted good. Katherine knew they did because she had made dozens of practice pies over the years, perfecting her mother's recipe. By the end of the day, all 24 pies were gone, and she had a growing list of customers asking when she would make more. Nathan returned from his deliveries to find Katherine tallying up the day's earnings with barely concealed excitement. "Something good happen?" he asked, noting the flush in her cheeks and the sparkle in her eyes. "I sold out," Katherine said, allowing herself a moment of pure joy. "All the pies gone, and people want more. Nathan, this could actually work." "Of course it could work. You are an excellent cook." He said it with such simple confidence that Katherine blinked in surprise. "How would you know? You have not tried my food." "I can smell, cannot I?" And I saw those customers' faces when they took their first bites. That is not the expression of people eating mediocre food. Katherine felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the heat from the stove. "Thank you," she said quietly. Over the following weeks, a rhythm developed. Nathan handled the deliveries and the heavy physical work around the store while Katherine cooked. She expanded beyond meat pies to include stews, biscuits, roasted chickens, and fruit cobblers. The prepared food quickly became the most profitable part of the store's business, with cowboys and ranch hands stopping by every day to see what she had made. Thomas watched this development with mixed feelings. He was proud of his daughter's success, but Katherine could see the worry in his eyes. She was building something, yes, but what would happen when he was gone? How would she manage alone? Katherine tried not to think about it. She threw herself into work with almost manic energy, rising before dawn to start cooking, staying up late to plan menus and calculate costs. Nathan often worked alongside her, chopping vegetables or stirring pots while she managed multiple dishes at once. They fell into an easy partnership, moving around each other in the small kitchen space with increasing familiarity. "You have got quite the head for business," Nathan observed one evening as they cleaned up after another successful day. "The way you manage inventory, calculate profits, plan ahead, it is impressive." Katherine shrugged, scrubbing a pot with more force than necessary. "My father taught me well. He always said that a good storekeeper needs to think 3 steps ahead." "He is right. But Katherine, this is more than just being a good storekeeper. You are building something new here, something that could really be special. Have you given more thought to that restaurant idea?" She had constantly, but she had not spoken of it aloud in weeks. "It does not matter how much I think about it. The town council would never approve a business license for me." "Why not?" "Because I am an unmarried woman, Nathan. The council is made up of men who believe women should be wives and mothers, not business owners. They tolerate me helping my father but running my own establishment. They would laugh me out of the room." Nathan set down the dish he had been drying, his expression serious. "So what are you going to do? Just give up on your dreams because some narrow-minded men say you cannot have them?" "What choice do I have?" Katherine demanded, frustration boiling over. "I cannot just wave a magic wand and change people's minds. This is the world we live in. The world changes when people refuse to accept the way things are." Nathan moved closer, his voice intense. "Katherine, I have been all over Texas, worked with men from every walk of life. You know what separates the successful ones from the failures. It is not money or connections or even luck. It is the refusal to quit when everyone else says it is impossible. On this frontier, we build dreams from dust. That is what makes this place special." Katherine stared at him, her heart pounding. No one had ever spoken to her like this before, with such absolute confidence in her abilities. "You make it sound so simple." "It is not simple. It is probably the hardest thing you will ever do, but that does not mean it is not worth doing." Their eyes met and held, and Katherine felt something shift between them, some invisible line being crossed. She became acutely aware of how close Nathan was standing, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his sage-colored eyes, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Nathan, She started, then stopped, not sure what she wanted to say. The moment was broken by a coughing fit from the front room. They both rushed out to find Thomas bent double, blood on his handkerchief. Katherine's earlier excitement evaporated instantly, replaced by cold fear. "Papa, we need to get you to Dr. Harrison," she said, taking his arm. "I am fine, Katie, just swallowed wrong." But he was not fine, and they all knew it. Nathan helped Thomas to his room above the store while Katherine ran for the doctor. Dr. Harrison came, examined Thomas, and took Katherine aside with grave eyes. "Your father is failing faster than I expected," he said bluntly. "I would prepare yourself, Miss Thompson. He likely does not have more than a few weeks left." The words hit Katherine like a physical blow. A few weeks. She had known this was coming, but the reality of it was so much worse than the anticipation. How could she lose her father in just a few weeks? How could she face this world alone? Nathan found her sitting on the stairs outside the store an hour later, her face buried in her hands. He sat down beside her without speaking, his presence solid and comforting. Finally, Katherine lifted her head. "He is dying," she said, her voice hollow. "Dr. Harrison says weeks, not months." "I am sorry," Nathan said simply. There were no platitudes, no false reassurances. Just genuine sympathy. "I do not know what I am going to do," Katherine whispered. "Without my father, I have nothing. No family, no security. The store will have to be sold to pay his debts. Even if I wanted to go east, I probably will not have enough money for the journey." "You will figure it out. You are one of the strongest people I have ever met." "I do not feel strong right now." Nathan reached over and took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. The gesture was intimate and comforting all at once. Strength is not about never being scared or sad. It is about finding the courage to keep going even when you are terrified. And Katherine, I have watched you over these past weeks. You have that kind of courage in spades. She looked down at their joined hands, feeling the calluses on his palm, the warmth of his skin against hers. When had this happened? When had Nathan Powell become so important to her? When had his opinion started to matter so much? "Will you stay?" she asked quietly. "After my father passes, I mean. I know the store probably will not survive without him, which means you will be out of a job. But I could use a friend right now." "I will stay as long as you need me," Nathan promised. "And Katherine, about the store, about your restaurant, I have been thinking. I have some money saved up from the cattle drives, not a fortune, but enough to help you get started. If you would let me invest in your dream, become a partner perhaps, we could make this work." Katherine's head snapped up. "What, Nathan, I cannot ask you to do that. You barely know me." "I know you well enough. And this is not charity. I believe in what you are trying to build here. I believe in you. Besides, I told you I was looking to put down roots, build something that would last. What better way than to help create something new in a growing town? But why? Why would you risk your savings on me?" Nathan was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing small circles on the back of her hand. "Honestly, because somewhere along the way, over these past weeks of working alongside you, I have started to care about you. More than I probably should, given that we have only known each other a short time. But there it is. I want to help you succeed, Katherine. Not just because I think your restaurant will be profitable, though I do, but because I want to see you happy. I want to see those dreams of yours come true." Katherine's breath caught in her throat. She should pull her hand away, should maintain some professional distance, but she did not want to. Instead, she squeezed his hand tighter. "Nathan, I do not know what to say. You do not have to say anything right now, just think about it. And whatever you decide, I meant what I said. I will stay." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of grief and preparation. Thomas grew weaker by the day, spending most of his time in bed. Katherine sat with him for hours, holding his hand, reminiscing about better times. He told her stories about her mother, about their early days in Brownsville when the town was nothing but a collection of tents and makeshift buildings. "Your mother would be so proud of you," Thomas said one afternoon, his voice barely above a whisper. "The way you have taken that cooking talent of yours and turned it into something real. She always knew you were destined for great things." "Papa, I have not done anything great. I make pies and stews in the back room of a general store." "That is where it starts, Katie. Small steps. But you are braver than you realize, braver than I ever was." He gripped her hand with surprising strength. "Promise me you will not give up on your dreams when I am gone. Promise me you will find a way to make that restaurant happen." "I promise," Katherine said, tears streaming down her face. "And Katie, about Nathan Powell." Katherine stiffened slightly. "What about him? He is a good man. I see the way he looks at you, and more importantly, I see the way you look at him. Do not be afraid to let yourself be happy. Your mother and I, we had such a short time together, but I would not trade those years for anything. Love is worth the risk, even when you know it might hurt. Papa, please do not talk like this. Someone has to tell you these things. Promise me you will at least consider it. Consider letting yourself love someone." "I promise," Katherine whispered. Thomas Thompson died 3 days later on a cool morning in early September. He slipped away peacefully in his sleep, and Katherine took some comfort in that. The funeral was well attended, with most of Brownsville turning out to pay their respects. Thomas had been a fixture in the community for over 2 decades, and people genuinely mourned his passing. Nathan stood beside Katherine throughout the service, a silent pillar of support. When it was over, when the last of the mourners had drifted away, he walked her back to the store, now looking empty and forlorn. "What happens now?" Katherine asked, standing in the middle of the store that had been her whole life. "Now we figure out what you want to do," Nathan said. "Have you thought any more about my offer? About becoming partners?" Katherine had thought about little else during the long nights sitting with her dying father. "I have. And I want to say yes, but Nathan, I need you to understand what you would be getting into. The store is in debt. Even with the money from the prepared food, we barely broke even. If we try to start a restaurant, we will be risking everything. Your savings, your future. If it fails, you could lose it all. I understand the risks. Do you? Because I am not sure I could live with myself if I let you invest in my dream and it all fell apart." Nathan took both her hands in his expression earnest. "Katherine, listen to me. I have been a drifter my whole life, moving from place to place, never committing to anything or anyone. That was safe, but it was also empty. When I came to Brownsville, I was not looking for anything except a temporary job. But then I met you, and everything changed. You are passionate and determined and so full of dreams that it makes my chest ache just watching you. I want to be part of this. I want to help you build something amazing. And if it fails, well, at least we will have failed while trying to do something worth doing." Katherine felt tears welling up again, but these were different from the tears she had cried over her father. These were tears of hope, of possibility. "You really believe we can do this?" "I know we can. On this frontier, we build dreams from dust, remember. That is what we will do. We will take this store, this small space, and transform it into something that has never existed in Brownsville before. We will create a place where people can gather, share a good meal, feel like they are part of something. And Katherine, we will do it together." The certainty in his voice, the absolute conviction, broke through the last of Katherine's resistance. "All right," she said. "Yes, let us do this. Let us build a restaurant from dust." Nathan's face broke into a brilliant smile, and before Katherine quite knew what was happening, he had swept her into his arms, spinning her around in a circle. She laughed despite herself, clutching his shoulders for balance. When he set her down, they were standing very close, close enough that Katherine could see the individual lashes framing his sage-colored eyes. "We are really doing this," she said, half disbelieving. "We are really doing this," Nathan confirmed. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, Nathan lowered his head. Katherine tilted her face up to meet him, and their lips touched in a kiss that was gentle and sweet and full of promise. It was Katherine's first real kiss, and it felt like coming home and launching into the unknown all at the same time. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "Why did you wait so long?" Katherine asked, surprised by her own boldness. "Because I wanted to do this right. I wanted to be sure you felt the same way I did." "And how do you feel?" Nathan pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "I am falling in love with you, Katherine Thompson. Have been since the day you sold those first meat pies with such joy on your face. I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other a short time, but that does not make it any less true." Katherine's heart felt like it might burst from her chest. "I am falling in love with you too," she whispered. "It terrifies me, but it also feels like the most natural thing in the world." They kissed again, longer this time, and when they finally broke apart, Katherine felt changed somehow. Stronger, more certain of her path forward. The next morning they got to work. First, they had to settle Thomas's debts. The store's inventory and fixtures were sold to another merchant who had been looking to expand. After paying off what was owed, Katherine was left with a small sum of money, not much, but enough to give them a foundation. Nathan contributed his savings, and together they had just enough to purchase a small building on the main street that had previously housed a saddle shop. The building needed significant work. The roof leaked, the floorboards were warped, and the walls needed fresh paint. But it had large windows that let in beautiful natural light, and there was enough space for a proper kitchen in the back, with room for tables in the front. "It is perfect," Katherine declared, standing in the middle of the dusty, dilapidated space. "It will be perfect," Nathan corrected gently. After about a month of hard work, he was right. They spent the next 4 weeks transforming the building. Nathan repaired the roof, replaced damaged floorboards, and built tables and chairs from salvaged wood. Katherine painted the walls a cheerful yellow, sewed curtains for the windows, and set up the kitchen exactly as she wanted it. They worked from dawn until well after dark most days, surviving on cold suppers and the sheer determination to see their vision come to life. Word spread through Brownsville about what they were doing. Some people were supportive, stopping by to offer encouragement and ask when the restaurant would open. Others were less kind, suggesting that Katherine was overstepping her place, that no good could come from a woman trying to run a business. A few of the town council members made their disapproval known, though they stopped short of trying to block her directly, perhaps because Nathan's name was also on the business license they had applied for. "Let them talk," Nathan said, when Katherine expressed frustration about the gossip. "When we open and people taste your cooking, they will change their tune quickly enough." Katherine was not so sure, but she tried to focus on the positive. They had supporters too. Mrs. Chen from the boarding house brought them fresh bread. The blacksmith, a burly man named Mr. Santos, offered to make custom pots and pans at a discounted price. Even Dr. Harrison stopped by to offer his congratulations and a promise to be among their first customers. As they worked, Katherine and Nathan grew closer. They talked about everything: their childhoods, their hopes for the future, their fears and insecurities. Nathan told her about growing up in a small town in New Mexico, about losing his parents to cholera when he was 15, about the years he had spent drifting because he had no place else to go. Katherine shared memories of her mother, her grief over losing both parents so young, her terror at the thought of failing. "You are not going to fail," Nathan assured her one evening as they sat on the front steps of the restaurant, too tired to do anything more productive. "This place is going to be the finest eating establishment in South Texas. You cannot know that. I can and I do. Katherine, you have something special. It is not just your cooking, though that is excellent. It is the way you think about food, about creating an experience for people. When you talk about what you want this restaurant to be, your whole face lights up. That kind of passion is infectious. People will feel it when they walk through that door." Katherine leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him beside her. "What did I do to deserve you? You were yourself. That was always going to be enough." They kissed there on the steps as the sun set over Brownsville, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Katherine felt happy in a way she had not felt since before her mother's death, maybe even before that. This feeling of building something meaningful with someone who believed in her, who loved her for exactly who she was, it was more than she had ever dared to dream. The restaurant finally opened on a crisp October morning. They had decided to call it the Prairie Rose, a name that evoked both the wildness of the frontier and the beauty of something cultivated and cared for. Katherine had spent the previous 3 days preparing food, making sure they had enough to feed whatever crowd might show up. Nathan had arranged tables with wildflowers in the center of each one, and the whole space looked welcoming and warm. Katherine was terrified. What if no one comes? She asked Nathan as they stood behind the counter, waiting for their official opening time of 11 o'clock. Someone will come. Trust me. At exactly 11, Nathan unlocked the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Dr. Harrison walked in, followed by Mrs. Chen and 3 of her boarders. Then the Millers arrived with their 4 children. Then more people and more, until the restaurant was packed with customers, all eager to try Katherine's cooking. She worked like a woman possessed, cooking dish after dish, calling out orders to Nathan, who served and cleared tables with good-natured efficiency. They had planned a simple menu for opening day: roasted chicken with vegetables, beef stew, fresh bread, and apple cobbler for dessert. The food disappeared almost as fast as Katherine could prepare it. The compliments were overwhelming. People raved about the chicken, declared the stew the best they had ever tasted, fought over the last servings of cobbler. By 2 o'clock, they had completely sold out of food and had to turn away disappointed latecomers with promises that they would have more tomorrow. When the last customer finally left, Katherine and Nathan stood in the middle of their restaurant, looking at the empty tables and the small lockbox full of coins. They had done it. The restaurant was a success. "We did it," Katherine said, hardly daring to believe it. "You did it," Nathan corrected. "I just helped." "No," Katherine said firmly. "We did this together. I could never have accomplished this without you, Nathan. Not just the physical work, though that was essential, but you believed in me when I did not believe in myself. You encouraged me when everything seemed impossible. You are not just my business partner. You are my best friend, my love, my everything." Nathan pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "And you are mine. Katherine, I know we have only known each other a few months. I know some people will say it is too fast, but I do not care what other people think. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, building dreams from dust and watching you shine. Will you marry me?" Katherine pulled back to look at his face, making sure she had heard him correctly. "Are you proposing to me in our restaurant on opening day?" "I am." "Is that all right?" Katherine laughed, feeling giddy with joy. "It is perfect. And yes, Nathan Powell, I will marry you." They kissed there in the middle of the prairie rose, surrounded by empty tables and the lingering scent of good food, and Katherine felt like the luckiest woman in Texas. She had lost so much over the past year, but she had also gained more than she ever imagined possible. She had her restaurant, her dream made real, and she had Nathan, a man who loved her unconditionally and believed in her abilities without reservation. The wedding took place 3 weeks later, a simple ceremony in the Brownsville church with most of the town in attendance. Katherine wore a dress of pale blue silk that Mrs. Chen helped her sew, and Nathan wore his best suit, looking handsome and nervous as he waited for her at the altar. Dr. Harrison gave Katherine away in her father's absence, and there were few dry eyes in the church as they exchanged vows. Afterward, they held the wedding celebration at the Prairie Rose, naturally. Katherine had spent days preparing a feast, and the restaurant was packed with well-wishers. Even some of the town council members who had been skeptical about the restaurant attended, won over by Katherine's obvious success and Nathan's respectability. "To the bride and groom," someone called out, raising a glass. "May their love be as enduring as the Texas sky and their business as prosperous as the Rio Grande Valley." "Hear, hear," the crowd chorused. Katherine looked around the room at all these people, her neighbors and customers and friends, gathered to celebrate her happiness. She thought about her father, wished desperately that he could be here to see this, to see that his daughter had not just survived his death but had thrived. She thought about her mother, gone for so long but never forgotten, and hoped she would be proud. Nathan squeezed her hand under the table. "What are you thinking about?" he asked quietly. "Everything," Katherine replied. "About how impossible all this seemed just a few months ago, about how my dreams felt so far out of reach, about how you came along and helped me believe that impossible things were possible after all. On this frontier, we build dreams from dust," Nathan reminded her. "That is what we did, what we will keep doing. Together." "Together," Katherine agreed, and they sealed the promise with a kiss. The months that followed were busy and challenging and wonderful. The Prairie Rose became the most popular eating establishment in Brownsville, with customers coming from as far away as Matamoros to sample Katherine's cooking. She expanded the menu, adding dishes inspired by the mix of cultures in the region. Mexican tamales and enchiladas alongside traditional American roasts and stews, creating a unique fusion that people loved. Nathan proved to be not just a supportive husband but an excellent business partner. He managed the front of the house with charm and efficiency, built relationships with local ranchers and farmers to ensure they always had the best ingredients, and handled the financial side of things with careful attention to detail. They made a good team, balancing each other's strengths and weaknesses. They moved into a small house near the restaurant, a modest 2-bedroom structure that they gradually made into a home. Katherine planted a garden, growing herbs and vegetables for the restaurant. Nathan built furniture in his spare time, surprising Katherine with his skill at woodworking. They adopted a dog, a scruffy mutt they named Dusty, who spent his days lounging in a corner of the restaurant and charming customers into giving him scraps. Life was good, but it was not without challenges. Some of the other business owners in Brownsville resented their success, spreading rumors or trying to undercut their prices. The work was exhausting, with Katherine rising before dawn each day to start cooking and often not finishing cleanup until well after dark. Money was tight, with most of their profits going back into the business or saved for the uncertain future. But through it all, Katherine and Nathan had each other. On the nights when Katherine was too exhausted to move, Nathan would massage her aching feet and tell her stories to make her laugh. When Nathan worried about money or whether they had made the right decisions, Katherine would remind him of how far they had come, of all they had already accomplished together. "You ever regret it?" Katherine asked one night as they lay in bed, too tired for anything but talking. "Investing all your money in this. You could have done anything, gone anywhere. Instead, you are stuck here with me, working yourself to exhaustion every day." Nathan rolled onto his side to face her, his expression serious in the moonlight filtering through the window. "Katherine, I have never regretted a single moment with you. Never. This life we are building, it is everything I did not know I wanted. I love you. I love our restaurant. I love waking up every morning knowing that we are creating something meaningful together. How could I ever regret that?" "I love you too," Katherine whispered. "More than I thought it was possible to love another person." They made love that night with a tenderness and passion that left them both breathless, and Katherine fell asleep feeling utterly content. She had her restaurant, her husband, and a future that stretched out before them full of possibility. A year after their wedding, Katherine discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with equal parts joy and terror. How would they manage a baby with the demands of the restaurant? What if something went wrong? What if she was not a good mother? Nathan was nothing but excited. "We will figure it out," he assured her, his hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach. "People run businesses and raise children all the time. It will be an adventure." "Everything is an adventure to you," Katherine said, but she was smiling. She continued working at the restaurant throughout her pregnancy, only slowing down in the final months when her growing belly made it difficult to move around the kitchen. They hired help for the first time, a young woman named Sarah who showed promise as a cook and was eager to learn. Katherine taught her everything she knew, grateful to have someone she could trust to maintain the quality of food the Prairie Rose was known for. Their son was born on a warm May evening in 1880, after a labor that lasted 18 hours and left Katherine exhausted but elated. They named him Thomas Nathan Powell, after Katherine's father and his father. He was a healthy baby with Nathan's sage-colored eyes and a full head of dark hair, and Katherine fell in love with him instantly. Motherhood was harder than Katherine had anticipated. She was used to being in control, managing her time efficiently, accomplishing what needed to be done. A baby followed no schedule and demanded attention at all hours. For the first few weeks, Katherine felt completely overwhelmed, crying from exhaustion and frustration, and wondering how she was supposed to balance being a mother with running a business. Nathan was a patient and involved father, taking his share of nighttime feedings and diaper changes, rocking baby Thomas to sleep, so Katherine could get a few hours of rest. Sarah stepped up beautifully at the restaurant, managing much of the daily cooking while Katherine was recovering from childbirth. Mrs. Chen stopped by regularly with casseroles and words of encouragement. Slowly, Katherine found her footing. She learned to nurse Thomas while reviewing the restaurant's accounts, to catch a nap when he napped, to accept that some days she would accomplish very little beyond keeping her baby alive and fed, and that was okay. The restaurant continued to thrive under Sarah's capable hands, and after 3 months, Katherine gradually began working more hours again, bringing Thomas with her and setting up a cradle in the corner of the kitchen where she could keep an eye on him. The customers loved having a baby at the Prairie Rose. Thomas became something of a mascot, with regular patrons stopping by just to coo at him and marvel at how much he was growing. Katherine found that motherhood had given her a new perspective on her business. She started offering family-style meals, recognizing that many of her customers were parents themselves, exhausted after long days of work and grateful for nutritious food they did not have to prepare themselves. Life settled into a new rhythm. Thomas grew from an infant to a toddler, his personality emerging more each day. He was curious and fearless, much like his father, with Katherine's determination. He took his first steps in the restaurant kitchen, lurching from the table to his mother's waiting arms while Sarah cheered in the background. His first word was "more," accompanied by an insistent tapping on his high chair tray, and Nathan joked that he was clearly his mother's son, always thinking about food. When Thomas was 2, Katherine found out she was pregnant again. This time the news was less terrifying, though no less challenging. She knew what to expect now, knew that she could manage motherhood and business ownership simultaneously. Their daughter was born in the winter of 1882. A tiny, delicate thing they named Rose Elizabeth Powell, after the restaurant and Elizabeth Street where Katherine's journey had truly begun. Rose was a different kind of baby than Thomas had been, quieter and more content to simply observe the world around her. She had her mother's green eyes and Nathan's easy smile, and Thomas was immediately smitten with his baby sister, wanting to help with everything from feeding to diaper changes. "We have got quite the family now," Nathan said one evening, watching Katherine nurse Rose while Thomas played with his wooden blocks on the floor nearby. "We do," Katherine agreed, feeling overwhelmed with love for these 3 people who had become her whole world. The Prairie Rose continued to prosper. By 1883, it had been operating successfully for 5 years, far longer than most restaurants lasted on the frontier. They had paid off all their debts and were actually saving money, putting away funds for the children's future education. Katherine had trained 2 more cooks in addition to Sarah, allowing her to step back from the daily cooking and focus more on menu planning, ingredient sourcing, and business management. She had become something of a local celebrity, written up in the Brownsville newspaper as an example of female entrepreneurship. Other women sought her advice, asking how she had managed to succeed in a world that told them they could not. Katherine always gave the same answer. She had been willing to work harder than anyone else, and she had found a partner who truly believed in her abilities. Nathan expanded his role as well, turning part of the restaurant into a small mercantile where they sold dry goods and specialty items. It was a natural extension of their business, and it provided another revenue stream while also serving the community's needs. He proved to have a knack for negotiating with suppliers and finding products that people wanted. "You know," Nathan said one night as they reviewed the month's accounts, "we could expand. Open another location, maybe in Corpus Christi or San Antonio. We have got the model down, the reputation. It could work." Katherine considered this. 5 years ago, the idea of opening even one restaurant had seemed impossible. Now Nathan was talking about multiple locations. It was dizzying and exciting and terrifying all at once. "Let me think about it," she said. "Right now, I want to focus on making sure this location continues to thrive. But maybe someday." "Someday," Nathan agreed, pulling her into his arms. "We have got all the time in the world to build our empire." "Our empire," Katherine repeated with a laugh. "Listen to you sounding like a railroad baron." "Well, why not? If we are going to dream, we might as well dream big. On this frontier, we build dreams from dust, remember?" "I remember. That is what you told me the day you proposed, standing in the middle of our restaurant after our first successful opening." "Best decision I ever made, proposing to you that day. Best decision I ever made was saying yes." They kissed, comfortable and familiar, and still with that spark that had been there from the beginning. Katherine thought about how far they had come since that scorching afternoon in July 1878, when Nathan had ridden into her life. She had been lost then, grieving her father and terrified of the future. Now she had a thriving business, a loving husband, 2 beautiful children, and a sense of purpose she had never imagined possible. It had not been easy. There had been setbacks and challenges, moments when she had doubted everything, nights when she had cried from exhaustion and stress. But through it all, Nathan had been there, encouraging her, believing in her, reminding her that impossible dreams were only impossible until someone had the courage to make them real. "I love you," she told him, meaning it with every fiber of her being. "I love you too," Nathan replied. "Thank you for letting me be part of your dream." "It is our dream now," Katherine corrected. "Everything we have built, we built together." The years continued to pass, marked by the small milestones of daily life. Thomas started school, proving to be an excellent student with his mother's head for numbers. Rose grew into a sweet, artistic child who loved to draw pictures of the restaurant and the customers. The Prairie Rose celebrated its 10th anniversary with a massive party that half of Brownsville attended. Katherine and Nathan grew older, laugh lines forming around their eyes, gray beginning to thread through their hair. But they were happy, deeply and completely happy in a way that Katherine had once thought impossible for someone like her. She had built something lasting from nothing but determination and flower and hope. She had found love when she least expected it. She had created a family and a legacy that would outlast her. Sometimes, late at night when she could not sleep, Katherine would walk through the quiet restaurant, running her hands over the tables Nathan had built, looking at the walls she had painted that first hopeful autumn. She would think about her father, about the promise she had made to him on his deathbed, the promise to not give up on her dreams. She had kept that promise and so much more. "Thank you, Papa," she would whisper into the darkness. "Thank you for teaching me to dream. Thank you for bringing Nathan into my life. I hope wherever you are, you can see that I did it. I built something worth building." And Thomas Thompson, gone for years but never forgotten, would surely smile down at his daughter with pride. One particularly beautiful spring evening in 1888, when Thomas was 8 and Rose was 6, the family gathered on the porch of their house after closing the restaurant for the day. Dusty, now an old dog with a graying muzzle, dozed at Nathan's feet. Thomas was reading aloud from a book about explorers, while Rose drew pictures in her sketchbook. Katherine sat in her favorite rocking chair, Nathan beside her, their hands linked together as they had been 1,000 times before. "Mama, Papa," Thomas said, looking up from his book. "Do you think I could be an explorer when I grow up? Travel to new places and discover things?" "You can be anything you want to be," Katherine told him. "That is the wonderful thing about this world. If you are willing to work hard enough, dream big enough, you can accomplish anything." "Is that how you and Papa started the restaurant?" Rose asked, always interested in stories about the past. "That is exactly how we started it," Nathan said. "Your mother had a dream that everyone told her was impossible, but she did not let that stop her. She worked harder than anyone I have ever known, and she turned that impossible dream into something real." "I had help," Katherine added, squeezing Nathan's hand. "Your father believed in me when I did not believe in myself. He taught me that on this frontier we build dreams from dust. That has been the guiding principle of our lives." "What does that mean?" Thomas asked. "Building dreams from dust," Katherine thought for a moment, wanting to give her son an answer he would remember. "It means that nothing is too difficult if you have courage and determination. When your grandfather died, I had nothing, just some cooking skills and dreams that felt impossible. But your father and I took that nothing and built something beautiful. We built the Prairie Rose. We built this family. We took dust, essentially, and shaped it into dreams come true. And someday, when you are older, you will build your own dreams from whatever materials you have available." "Can dreams be anything?" Rose asked, her green eyes wide and serious. "They can be anything you want them to be," Nathan confirmed. "Your mother wanted a restaurant. I wanted a home and a family and a business to call my own. Those were our dreams, and we made them real. Your dreams might be completely different, and that is wonderful. The important thing is not what you dream about, but that you have the courage to pursue those dreams even when they seem impossible." Thomas considered this, his young face thoughtful. "I think I understand. It is like in my book, when the explorers did not know what they would find, but they kept going anyway." "Exactly like that," Katherine said proudly. As the sun set over Brownsville, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange and purple, Katherine looked at her family and felt a deep sense of peace. This was what she had been working toward all those years ago, though she had not known it at the time. Not just the successful business or the financial security, but this feeling of belonging, of having created something meaningful and lasting. She thought about that young woman she had been, 22 years old and terrified, standing in her father's general store and wondering how she would survive. If she could go back and talk to that younger version of herself, she would tell her not to be afraid. She would tell her that impossible dreams were only impossible until someone made them real. She would tell her that love would find her when she least expected it, in the form of a drifting cowboy with sage-colored eyes and absolute faith in her abilities. But most of all, she would tell her younger self to hold on, because better days were coming. Days filled with love and laughter and children's voices. Days spent building something from dust and watching it flourish beyond her wildest imaginings. "What are you thinking about?" Nathan asked softly, noticing the expression on her face. "Everything," Katherine replied, the same answer she had given at their wedding celebration. "About how far we have come. About how grateful I am for you, for our children, for the life we have built together. About how none of this would exist if you had not ridden into Brownsville that day and convinced me that impossible things were possible." "I did not convince you of anything," Nathan said. "I just reminded you of something you already knew deep down. You always had the strength and courage to make your dreams come true. You just needed someone to believe in you. And you did. You believed in me completely, without reservation. That was easy. You are the most remarkable woman I have ever met." They kissed, ignoring the exaggerated groans of their children, who were at the age where parental affection was embarrassing. Katherine laughed against Nathan's lips, feeling young and hopeful and utterly content. The restaurant continued to thrive for many more years. Thomas eventually decided he wanted to be a lawyer rather than an explorer, attending university in Austin and returning to Brownsville to open his own practice. Rose became an artist, her paintings of South Texas landscapes earning recognition throughout the region. Both children married and had families of their own, and Katherine and Nathan became grandparents, watching a new generation grow up around them. The Prairie Rose remained a landmark in Brownsville, a symbol of what could be accomplished through hard work and determination. Katherine and Nathan gradually stepped back from daily operations, training managers to handle the restaurant while they enjoyed their later years. They traveled some, visiting places they had only read about in books, but they always came home to Brownsville, to the town that had given them everything. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1909, Nathan organized a surprise celebration at the Prairie Rose. The restaurant was packed with family and friends, people whose lives had been touched by Katherine and Nathan's love story. There were speeches and toasts, reminiscences about the early days when no one thought the restaurant would last more than a few months. Katherine stood at the center of it all, now 53 years old but still recognizable as the determined young woman who had refused to let her dreams die. Nathan, 55 and distinguished with his gray hair and weather-lined face, stood beside her as he always had, his hand warm and solid in hers. "I want to thank you all for coming," Katherine said when it was her turn to speak. 30 years ago, I married the most wonderful man I have ever known. People told us we were crazy, trying to start a restaurant in a town that did not think it needed one. They told us I was overstepping my bounds as a woman, that we would fail within months. But Nathan taught me something important. He taught me that on this frontier we build dreams from dust. That has been the guiding principle of our marriage and our business. We took nothing and made it into something. We built a restaurant, a family, a life worth living. And we did it together, supporting each other through every challenge and celebrating every success. That is what marriage should be. That is what love should be. She turned to Nathan, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for being my partner in all things. Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. Thank you for loving me so completely. These 30 years have been the greatest gift of my life." Nathan pulled her close, kissing her forehead tenderly. "The gift has been mine," he said softly. "You made all my dreams come true, Katherine. Every single one." The celebration continued late into the night, but eventually the guests drifted away, leaving Katherine and Nathan alone in the restaurant that had been the foundation of their life together. They walked through the familiar space hand in hand, remembering. "Do you remember opening day?" Nathan asked. How terrified you were that no one would come. I remember. And I remember how you insisted that everything would be fine, that people would love the food. You were right, as you usually are. Not always. You are the one with the good instincts. I just follow your lead. Katherine laughed. That is not how I remember it. I remember being lost and scared, and you showing me that there was a path forward. You gave me courage when I had none. They stood in the center of the restaurant, surrounded by decades of memories. Katherine thought about everything that had happened in this space. The first meals served, the first kiss after Nathan's proposal, the celebration after Thomas was born, Rose's first birthday party, countless family dinners and community gatherings. This place had been the heart of their lives, the physical manifestation of their shared dreams. I love you, she told Nathan, meaning it as deeply as she had the first time she said those words. I love you too. Always have, always will. They locked up the restaurant and walked home through the quiet streets of Brownsville, a town that had grown and changed so much over the decades, but still felt like home. The stars shone bright overhead, that same vast Texas sky that had witnessed their entire journey together. Years continued to pass, each one precious. Katherine and Nathan grew old together gracefully, their love deepening with time. They spent their days at the restaurant in the mornings, now more a social gathering place for them than actual work, and their afternoons with grandchildren, passing on family stories and the lessons they had learned. In the spring of 1920, Nathan fell ill with pneumonia. He was 73 years old, and though Katherine prayed desperately for his recovery, she knew in her heart that their time together was drawing to a close. She sat by his bedside in their home, holding his hand just as she had held her father's hand decades before. "Katherine," Nathan whispered, his voice weak but still warm with love. "My beautiful Katherine, do not be sad. We had a wonderful life together." "The best life," Katherine agreed, tears streaming down her face. "I do not know how to exist in a world without you. You will be fine. You are the strongest person I have ever known, and I will always be with you in every corner of that restaurant, in our children and grandchildren, in everything we built together." He squeezed her hand with what little strength he had left. "Promise me you will keep living, keep dreaming. Do not let my death stop you from embracing life." "I promise," Katherine whispered. Nathan smiled, that easy smile that had won her heart so many years ago. "On this frontier we build dreams from dust. That is what we did, you and I. We built something beautiful from nothing. I am so proud of what we accomplished, so grateful for every moment with you." "I love you," Katherine said, her voice breaking. "I love you too, forever and always." Nathan Powell died peacefully that evening, with Katherine holding his hand and their children gathered around. The funeral was huge, with people coming from all over South Texas to pay their respects to a man who had touched so many lives. Katherine stood through it with dignity, though inside she felt like her heart had been ripped from her chest. The weeks after Nathan's death were the hardest of Katherine's life. She moved through each day mechanically, going through the motions of living without really feeling alive. The restaurant continued to operate, but Katherine could barely bring herself to visit it. Everywhere she looked, she saw Nathan. His chair at their table, the corner where he used to read the newspaper, the kitchen where they had cooked side by side so many times. It was her granddaughter, Rose's oldest daughter Alice, who finally broke through her grief. Alice was 15, bright and determined, and she reminded Katherine forcefully of herself at that age. "Grandma," Alice said one afternoon, finding Katherine sitting alone in the dark house. "This is not what Grandpa would want. He would want you to keep living, keep dreaming. You told me once that on this frontier we build dreams from dust. Well, I think it is time you remembered that." The words, spoken with such conviction, cut through Catherine's fog of grief. She looked at her granddaughter, this child of her child, and saw the future stretching forward. Nathan was gone, and that loss would always hurt, but his legacy lived on. Their legacy lived on in their children and grandchildren, in the restaurant they had built, in the love they had shared. "You are right," Katherine said slowly. "You are absolutely right. Your grandfather would be furious if he knew I was sitting here wasting the life we worked so hard to build." "So what are you going to do about it?" Katherine thought for a moment, then smiled for the first time since Nathan's death. "I am going to teach you to cook. And maybe we will update the menu at the Prairie Rose, add some new dishes. Your grandfather always said we should keep evolving, keep growing. I think it is time I honored that." And so, at 64 years old, Katherine Thompson Powell began again. She threw herself back into the restaurant with renewed purpose, working alongside her granddaughter to create new recipes that honored the old traditions while embracing new possibilities. She started mentoring other young women in Brownsville who wanted to start their own businesses, passing on the lessons Nathan had taught her about courage and determination. She lived for another 12 years, long enough to see women gain the right to vote, long enough to watch her grandchildren grow into capable adults, long enough to know that the legacy she and Nathan had built would endure long after she was gone. The Prairie Rose continued to thrive, eventually being taken over by Thomas and his wife, who maintained the traditions Katherine had established while adding their own touches. Katherine Thompson Powell died peacefully in her sleep in April 1932, at the age of 76. Her funeral was as well attended as Nathan's had been, a testament to the impact she had made on her community. She was buried beside Nathan, their headstones simple but bearing an inscription that captured the essence of their lives together. "On this frontier, we build dreams from dust." The Prairie Rose continued to operate for many more decades, becoming a historic landmark in Brownsville. People would come from all over to eat at the restaurant where Katherine Thompson had dared to dream the impossible, where she had built something lasting from nothing but courage and determination and love. The story of Katherine and Nathan became part of Brownsville's history, an inspiration to anyone who had ever been told their dreams were impossible. And somewhere, in whatever place exists beyond this life, Katherine and Nathan were together again, building new dreams and loving each other as completely as they always had. Their story had ended, but the legacy they left behind continued, a reminder that on any frontier, whether geographical or personal, dreams could be built from dust if you had the courage to try. The impossible had become possible, and that possibility had transformed not just two lives but an entire community, rippling forward through generations. It was a love story for the ages, wild and beautiful and utterly real, proving that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a simple choice to believe in something, someone, and most importantly, in yourself.